Welcome to my startup journal. Restart. Welcome to my startup journal. I'm Abraham, and this is episode number 1. So please bear with me as I figure out the finer points of things. The word for this week is perfection. What do I mean by that? Being a perfectionist, perfection in what you're trying to achieve. Okay, I'll admit it, I am a total perfectionist through and through, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to end up with a bunch of ex-boyfriends coming out and telling me, I told you so, but there it is, I've laid it out on the table. So, what's the problem with being a perfectionist? Well, the problem is that in the work world, and in the world of startups especially, it just doesn't work very well. Of course, there are careers where it is absolutely necessary that you are a perfectionist. But when you're starting a new tech company or when you're in any really big company, you're really often in a race to launch. And the race then moving forward is for every subsequent release that comes after that to try and stay in a market leading position and keep your customers happy. And right now, the market, especially in the world of tech startups and apps, is so incredibly saturated. The truly new ideas that exist out there are truly original ideas are very few and far between. And even if it is original, it's probably not going to stay that way for very long. I personally think that the system is really set against us when it comes to teaching us to be perfectionists, because from a very early age in school, we're taught that 100% is the best. That's what we're all trying to achieve. We're all measured out of 100%. We're measured toward A+ grades, things like that. And the truth is that after 18 years, that's pretty ingrained into who you are. Though when it comes to being in a startup and being in many corporate jobs, getting a solid 75% and getting to the market faster than your competitor is going to put you far ahead in the long run. I struggle with being a perfectionist pretty much every single day in my startup. We've literally hit a point with my co-founder and I where we were calling it MVP cubed, because it's the third iteration of our minimum viable product, because we've had to bring it down to the simplest level that is truly an MVP versus what we thought was a market MVP in the first place. So, what can you do to combat this tendency? Well, first is to be aware of the problem. The first step in solving any problem is being aware that it exists. Now, second, and actually taking some steps forward in this, is to start retraining yourself. So consciously ask yourself, every time you have a task, be it big or small, be it a pitch deck or an email, does this really require perfection? And what level? Will 75% do? Will 50% do? Will 90% do? I can also promise you that with this one, that the difference between 75% and your 100% will be very noticeable to you, but not necessarily noticeable to everybody else. The third thing, prioritize. What you choose to devote your time to is incredibly important when you're starting a new company. There's so many different things that you have to consider, from brand to legal to product to finances to investment to networking, all of these different things. So you have to prioritize, and you have to consciously choose not just what you're going to do, but also what you're not going to devote your time to. And sometimes that means giving up things that you really want to do, also in your personal life. I recently had somebody ask me if I wanted to go out for drinks or to go to a specific event, and I said, no, because I committed to myself for the next 4 weeks to try a very structured working schedule of how I split my time, and it just doesn't fit in. The fourth thing, flip failure on its head. I can't stress this one enough. Tons of people talk about how we need to learn from failure and how important it is in our lives. But I truly think that failure is one of the most valuable inputs that something needs to change. And the faster that you can get that input, the faster that you can test that, the better. Just bear with me for a moment on this one. I really had to think it through, because I thought recently that getting from that 75% to 100% point was so important for my pitch deck. I was sitting on my hands, I was going to events, there were opportunities to stand up, and I didn't get up to actually pitch my idea because I thought, it's just not quite there yet. So a couple weeks ago, I decided, screw it, I'm just going to go for it. I was at an event, very relaxed. You didn't even need to have slides up. And I decided to stand up and go for it. And it was amazing. I didn't win the pitch competition, but the judge poked some holes in my business model quite quickly that I kind of knew existed already, but the fact that it was so blatantly obvious to him and that that's what he went after right away was incredibly valuable to me, because it made me turn around and say, okay, this isn't something I can just skate over. This is something I truly need to solve, or else every investor that I go to talk to is going to have the same problem and going to strike me down at that point. So with that, going through those 4 things again. First, be aware of the problem. Second, begin retraining yourself. Third, prioritize what are you going to do, but also what aren't you going to do. And fourth, flip that failure cycle around on its head and give it a go to put yourself out there to actually not win, to not hit the 100%, but learn something in that 25% that you didn't get to. Thanks for tuning in. Stay tuned for next week, where we'll be talking a little bit more about the life of a startup and what it's like to go through this process, exciting and exhausting and scary as it is.